Captain Hanjum stood on the observation deck of Lunar Base Alpha, his eyes fixed on the small metallic objects that drifted through Earth's orbit. The objects looked harmless, like space junk or old satellite parts. But Han felt uneasy. There were too many of them, and they moved too perfectly. "Captain, we have counted 57 objects so far," said Officer Kang, who stood beside him. "They appeared 3 days ago." Han nodded. "And Earth Defense Command still thinks they're just debris." "Yes, sir, but I don't think space junk moves like that." Han watched as one of the objects changed course slightly, adjusting its path toward Earth. These were not random pieces of metal. They were being controlled. "Get me a direct line to Dr. Kim Suk," Han ordered, "and prepare my shuttle. I'm returning to Earth." Dr. Kim Suk yawned as she stared at her computer screen. For the past 48 hours, she had been tracking the strange objects in Earth's orbit. As Earth's top expert on alien technology, she had been called when standard analysis failed. The phone rang, breaking her concentration. "Dr. Kim speaking," she answered. "Kim, it's Han. Please tell me you know what these things are." She smiled at the sound of her old friend's voice. "Not yet, but I know what they're not. They're not human-made, and they're not natural. Some of them have started entering our atmosphere." "Any aggressive moves?" Han asked. "No, they're just positioning themselves. 17 have landed so far, scattered across the globe. Teams have been sent, but they can't get close. The objects create some kind of energy field. I'm coming to your lab. I'll be there in 6 hours." Kim looked at her messy desk covered with empty coffee cups and data printouts. "I'll be here." Lieutenant Park Da frowned at the seismic readings on his screen. As the head of the Geological Survey Division, he had seen every kind of earthquake pattern. But this was different. "Sir," called one of his team members, "we've got another tremor, same pattern as yesterday." Park walked over and studied the new data. "That's the 5th one this week. Same strength, same duration, at exactly the same time of day. Could it be military testing?" Park shook his head. No nation would risk such precise, predictable testing. "And look at this pattern. It's too regular. Almost like—" "Like what, sir?" "Like a countdown," Park said quietly. He reached for his phone. "I need to call someone at Earth Defense." Han's shuttle landed at the Seoul Research Center just after midnight. The facility was mostly empty, but lights still burned in Kim's laboratory. When Han entered, he found Kim surrounded by holographic displays showing the paths of the mysterious objects. "They have a name now," Kim said without looking up. "The media is calling them sleepers." "Appropriate," said Han. "Are they weapons?" Kim shook her head. "Not in the conventional sense. They don't explode or shoot anything. They just sit there, emitting that energy field." She pointed to a map showing red dots spread across the globe. "This is their current distribution. Notice anything?" Han studied the pattern. "They're evenly spaced, almost like a grid." "Exactly. And more are landing every day, filling in the gaps." Han felt a chill. "They're covering the entire planet." "Yes, and there's something else." Kim swiped to a new display showing wavy lines. "This is the energy signature they emit. It's weak now, but it's growing stronger as more of them land. If enough of them activate at full power, they could blanket the entire Earth in this field." Han finished. "But what does the field do?" Before Kim could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. "It's someone from the Geological Survey Division." She put it on speaker. "Dr. Kim speaking." "Dr. Kim, this is Lieutenant Park Da from the GST. I need to report something unusual about the objects that have landed." Han and Kim exchanged glances. "Go ahead, Lieutenant," Kim said. "We've detected regular seismic activities around each landing site. The tremors happen at the same time each day, increasing in strength. And there's something else. The pattern matches an alien mathematical sequence my team identified last year." Kim's eyes widened. You think these objects are communicating? Yes. I believe they're sending signals through the Earth itself. Like they're mapping it from the inside. Han stepped closer to the phone. Lieutenant, this is Captain Han Jun of the Earth Defense Force. I want you to bring all your data to the Seoul Research Center immediately. 3 hours later, the three of them stood around a large table covered with maps and data charts. Park had brought everything his team had collected. So these sleepers are creating a network, Han said, using both atmospheric and geological connections. Kim nodded. They're gathering data about our planet, its composition, our technology, our defenses. For whom? Park asked. Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. Kim's computer screens flashed with error messages. What's happening? Han asked. Kim rushed to her main system. Something's interfering with our power grid. Not just here. I'm getting reports from across the city. Han's military communicator buzzed. He answered it, listening intently, his face growing darker. All electronic defense systems worldwide are experiencing failures, he reported after hanging up. Global communications are breaking down. A deep rumble shook the building. That's not a normal tremor, Park said, checking his portable seismic monitor. It's much stronger, and it's everywhere. All sleepers are activating simultaneously. Kim's last functioning screen showed a satellite view of Earth. The image quality was poor, but they could see the sleepers glowing bright across the planet's surface. They're not mapping Earth, Kim whispered. They're disrupting it. Every electronic system, every defense capability. It's a trap, Han said grimly. And we walked right into it. The building shook again. Through the laboratory window, they saw the night sky light up with strange colors. Look! Park pointed to a breaking news alert on Kim's screen before it went dark. The brief message read, multiple large objects detected entering solar system from beyond Mars. They're coming, Han said. Whoever sent the sleepers is on their way. And thanks to these devices, we're defenseless. 1 week later, the three of them stood on the roof of the research center, watching the skies with binoculars. Most technology was still down, with only basic systems working intermittently. There, Han pointed to dark shapes moving across the evening sky. The advance fleet. Through his binoculars, Park could see massive ships, at least 20 of them, moving into Earth's orbit. Unlike the sleek ships in human science fiction, these were bulky and asymmetrical, like giant insects. The sleepers have done their job well, Kim said bitterly. Global defense systems are still offline. Military communications are down to radio only. We can't even coordinate between continents properly. We've identified them, Han said, based on old records from deep space monitoring. They call themselves the Mori. We've detected their probes at the edge of our solar system for decades, but they never approached, until now. They were studying us, Kim realized, learning our weaknesses, planning this trap. What do they want? Park asked. What aliens always want in invasion scenarios, Han replied. Resources, living space. Maybe they see us as a threat to eliminate before we become too advanced. A small functional radio on Kim's belt crackled. She listened, then looked up with wide eyes. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, in every human language, she said. Their message is playing on every working device on Earth. What are they saying? Park asked. Humans of Earth, we are the Mori. Your technology has been neutralized. Your weapons are useless. Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. We require your world and its resources. Cooperate, and you may be permitted to live as our subjects. Resist and face extinction. You have 3 Earth days to surrender your governments to Mori control. Silence fell between them as the message repeated. 3 days, Han finally said. That's how long we have to find a way to fight back. Kim looked at the alien ships through her binoculars. They think they've caught us in their perfect trap. They've disabled our technology, our communications, our defenses. But they don't know humans very well, do they? Park said quietly. Han smiled grimly. No, they don't. Because humans have faced disasters before. We fought wars with sticks and stones. We've survived when all odds were against us. And most importantly, Kim added, we adapt. We learn. We find weaknesses. The Mori think they've dug our grave, Han said, watching the alien ships moving into position above Earth's major cities. But they don't realize they've just stepped into it themselves. As darkness fell completely, they could see more ships appearing, their lights like new stars in the night sky. The invasion had begun. But so had humanity's fight for survival. 3 months had passed since the Mori ships arrived. The world was different now. Cities once bright with lights now stood dark at night. Cars sat unused on streets. Phones and computers were mostly silent. The sleepers had changed everything. Colonel Li Min crouched behind a broken wall, watching the sleeper device in the center of what was once a busy Seoul park. The metallic object was about the size of a small car, hovering 3 feet above the ground. It hummed softly, its surface pulsing with blue light. Status report, Lee whispered into his hand-powered radio. Team 1 in position, came the reply. No Mori patrols detected nearby. Lee nodded to his second-in-command. Tell Team 2 to start the sound device. This mission was dangerous, but necessary. After months of observation, human scientists had noticed something important. The sleepers reacted to certain sounds. High, steady tones seemed to disrupt their energy field for brief moments. A low whine began from somewhere to Lee's right. His team had built a simple, non-electronic sound generator, basically a wind-powered whistle designed to produce the exact frequency they needed. The sleeper's pulsing blue light flickered. It's working, Lee said. Team 3, approach with the ice. This was the second discovery about the sleepers. Extreme cold affected them. No one knew why, but it didn't matter. What mattered was finding weaknesses. 4 soldiers moved forward, carrying a large container of liquid nitrogen. Without electronic cooling systems, they had to make it using old-fashioned chemical methods. The container would only stay cold for a short time. Hurry, Lee urged as the soldiers reached the sleeper. Its energy field was visibly weaker, allowing them to get closer than anyone had managed before. They carefully poured the liquid nitrogen onto the sleeper. Steam rose as the super-cold liquid hit the device. The blue pulsing slowed. Back away now, Lee ordered. He lifted his specially made crossbow, no gunpowder or electronics needed, and fired a metal bolt directly at the sleeper's center. The bolt struck with a crack. The sleeper's light flickered wildly, then went dark. It dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. For a moment, everyone was silent. Then cheers erupted from the team. It worked, Lee's second-in-command said in disbelief. We actually disabled one. Lee allowed himself a small smile. Get the messenger birds ready. Every resistance group around the world needs to know how we did this. As his team moved to secure the dead sleeper, Lee looked up at the night sky where Mori ships hung like new moons. One small victory wouldn't win the war, but it was a start. In a hidden mountain bunker 200 miles away, Captain Han-jun, now General Han, studied the hand-drawn maps spread across a wooden table. Red X marks showed the locations of sleepers they knew about. Blue circles showed Mori ground bases. The door opened, and Dr. Kim Suk entered, looking tired but excited. We did it, she announced. Lee's team disabled a sleeper. Han looked up, hope in his eyes for the first time in months. How? Sound disruption combined with extreme cold. Then a direct hit to what appears to be a control node. Kim spread out her notes. What's more important is what we learned from examining it. The sleepers aren't just signal jammers. They're also receivers. They collect information and send it back to the Mori ships. Can we use that somehow? Han asked. Maybe, but I have something even better. Kim looked around to make sure they were alone, then lowered her voice. We've been studying the Mori pilot we captured last month. Their neural systems are compatible with our technology in ways we never expected. Han leaned forward. What are you saying? I'm saying humans can interface with Mori systems. Our brains can connect to their computers. Han stared at her. That's impossible. I thought so too. But something about our neural pathways is similar enough. With the right interface, a human could potentially control Mori tech. Kim tapped her notes. It's as if they never considered this possibility, that a lesser species could use their technology. This could change everything, Han said, already thinking of the possibilities. If we could control their systems. A knock at the door interrupted them. Lieutenant Park Dai entered, his uniform dusty from travel. Sir, you need to see this, Park said, handing Han a small tube. Han opened it and pulled out a rolled paper. It was a message from a resistance group in what used to be the United Nations headquarters. The Mori ambassador is requesting a meeting with human leaders, Han read aloud. They're calling it a peace negotiation. Peace, Kim said with disbelief. After 3 months of occupation. They must be getting desperate, Park suggested. Our guerrilla attacks are working better than we thought. Han continued reading. The ambassador's name is Krax. He claims the Mori don't want to destroy humanity, only to share our resources. Share, Kim snorted. Is that what they call taking everything we have? Han rolled the paper back up, his face thoughtful. This meeting could be useful. It would give us a chance to learn more about the Mori leadership. You're not actually considering talking to them? Park asked. Know your enemy, Han replied simply. Besides, while they're busy with diplomacy theater, they'll be paying less attention to our real operations. 1 week later, Krax the Mori ambassador stood before a small group of human representatives in what remained of New York City. The alien was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. Its eyes were large, with no visible pupils. The Mori High Command wishes to express satisfaction with human compliance so far, Krax said, its voice translated through a small device at its neck. However, resource extraction is behind schedule. More human workers are needed at mining sites. General Han, sitting among the representatives, studied the alien carefully. The Mori clearly believed they were in complete control. They had no idea how many of their operations were being sabotaged daily. What do humans receive in exchange for these resources? Han asked. Krax turned its large eyes toward him. You receive continued existence. Is this not sufficient? Murmurs spread through the human representatives. And if we provide more workers, what guarantees do we have for their safety? Han pressed. Workers who perform adequately will be fed, Krax stated, as if this was a generous offer. Those who resist will be eliminated. The Mori have no need for defective tools. That was the moment Han understood completely what they were dealing with. The Mori didn't see humans as another intelligent species. They saw them as tools, as resources themselves. We will need time to organize more workers, Han said carefully. You have 3 days, Krax replied. The Mori are patient, but our patience has limits. After the meeting, Han met with the other resistance leaders in a secure basement. They see us as ants, one leader said angrily. Insects to be used until we die. No, Han corrected. They see us as tools. And that's their biggest mistake. He pulled out a small device Kim had given him. Because tools can be turned against their users. The device lit up, showing Mori ship movements that Han had memorized during the meeting by interfacing with their systems through Kim's neural technology. The tiny implant behind his ear had recorded everything in the Mori ambassador's own systems. They think we're trapped, Han said, pointing to the information he'd stolen. But their trap is becoming our weapon. That night, Krax sent a message to the Mori High Command. Humans continue to be managed effectively. Some resistance persists, but nothing significant. The trap has worked perfectly. Their technology is useless, their military scattered. They are working in mines and processing centers with minimal issues. The High Commander's reply was brief. Acceptable. Increase extraction rates. Resistance is to be crushed immediately. Remember, Earth is just the beginning. Once its resources are depleted, we move to the next system. What Cracks couldn't know, was that a human technician named Jin had been hiding nearby, using Kim's neural interface to tap into the Mori communication network. Every word was being recorded and would soon reach General Han. As Jin slipped away into the night, he smiled. The Mori thought they had sprung the perfect trap. They had no idea that humans were already finding ways out, and more importantly, ways to turn the trap against those who set it. The real war was just beginning. 1 year had passed since the Mori invasion began. Winter snow covered the remains of what had once been a busy shopping district in Seoul. Now it was the site of a hidden resistance base, buried beneath collapsed buildings. Major Yoon Jin checked her equipment one last time. Her 5-person team was ready, each wearing the special headsets Dr. Kim had created. The neural interface technology had advanced significantly over the past months. Remember, Yoon told her team, once we're inside the Mori transport, we have 30 minutes before they detect our presence in their systems. Get what we need and get out. They moved silently through the empty streets. Overhead, a small Mori shuttle moved toward its landing area, a former sports stadium now converted into an alien base. Yoon activated her neural headset. Immediately, she could sense the Mori communications network, like a humming in her mind. The humans had discovered that the Mori used a form of technological telepathy to control their ships. With Kim's interface, humans could tap into this network. Unconnected to their landing protocols, Yoon said quietly, they're bringing down a prisoner transport. Security will be lighter than on their military vessels. Her team nodded. This mission was a gamble, but if successful, it would provide crucial information about the Mori fleet. As the shuttle landed, Yoon sent false data through her neural link. To the Mori systems, it would appear that the shuttle had landed normally with no security alerts. Now, she commanded. The team sprinted across the open ground to the shuttle's landing ramp. 2 Mori guards stood at attention, their stone-like skin gleaming in the winter sunlight. Before the aliens could react, Yoon's team fired their sound weapons, devices based on the frequency that disrupted sleeper technology. The guards clutched their heads and fell to their knees. Move in, Yoon ordered. Inside the shuttle, they found what they expected, a cargo area with human prisoners being transported to work camps. What they didn't expect was to find Dr. Park Dai among them. Lieutenant Park, Yoon exclaimed, helping the man to his feet. We thought you were dead. Park looked thin and tired, but his eyes were still sharp. Major Yoon. Good timing. I was captured 3 weeks ago at the Eastern Observation Post. We're here for the ship's navigation data, Yoon explained as her team worked to free the other prisoners. But finding you is an unexpected bonus. Park nodded toward the shuttle's control room. Better than navigation data. I've been on their command carrier. I know where it is and how it's protected. Yoon's eyes widened. The command carrier. The one that controls all the sleepers. The same. They brought me there for questioning before transferring me to this transport. Park tapped his head. I memorized everything I saw. And the Mori don't know that I understand their language now. This was better than they had hoped for. If they could locate the Mori command carrier, they might be able to strike at the heart of the alien control system. We need to get this information to General Han immediately, Yoon said. Chong, download the shuttle's data. Everyone else, prepare the prisoners for evacuation. As her team worked, Yoon used her neural interface to send false all-clear signals to the Mori base. For now, the aliens had no idea their shuttle had been taken. In the mountain research facility, General Han studied the large paper map spread across the table. Red marks showed successful attacks on Mori positions. Blue marks showed disabled sleepers. The map had a lot more colored marks than it did a year ago. Dr. Kim entered the room, excitement on her face. We've done it, she announced. The neural interface can now fully control Mori systems, not just connect to them. Han looked up. You're sure? Positive. We tested it on the sleeper components we've collected. A human with the interface can send commands that the Mori systems recognize as legitimate. This was the breakthrough they have been waiting for. If they could control Mori systems, they could turn the aliens' technology against them. What about the sound weapons? Han asked. Production is up to 50 units per day now. They're being distributed to resistance cells worldwide. Kim unfolded her own map. And look at this. We've mapped the effect of disabled sleepers. When one goes down, it creates a weak spot in their network. Han studied the pattern. If we could take down enough of them at once. Exactly. Their whole control grid would collapse, at least temporarily. Before they could discuss further, a messenger burst into the room. Sir, Major Yoon's team has returned. They've captured a Mori shuttle and rescued prisoners, including Lieutenant Park. Han and Kim exchanged surprised looks. Park is alive. Minutes later, Park stood before them, looking thin but determined. The Mori took me to their command carrier for questioning. I was able to gather critical intelligence. How did you avoid their mind probes? Kim asked. They don't have mind probes, Park explained. They rely entirely on their technology. They questioned me using translation devices, never suspecting I'd learned their language from the prisoners who worked on their ships. Park pointed to Han's map. Their command carrier is here, in high orbit over the Pacific. It's the central hub for all sleeper operations. Every signal, every command passes through it. Han leaned forward. If we could disable that ship, the entire sleeper network would collapse. Kim finished. But how do we reach it? We have no spacecraft capable of reaching orbit. Park smiled for the first time. We don't need our spacecraft. The Mori are bringing down transport shuttles daily to collect resources and workers. We just need to capture one of the larger ones. And we now have the means to control it, Han added, glancing at Kim's neural interface device. Hope filled the room. For the first time since the invasion, they had a clear target and the means to reach it. 2 weeks later, resistance leaders from around the world gathered via secure radio communication. General Han outlined the plan. The Mori believe we are beaten, he began. They think their trap has worked perfectly. Their arrogance is their weakness. He explained how Major Yoon's team would capture a large Mori transport vessel. Using the neural interface technology, they would take control of its systems and fly it to the command carrier. Once aboard, Han continued, Dr. Kim will use the interface to access the carrier's main control systems. If she can disable the sleeper network, our forces worldwide will launch simultaneous attacks on all Mori ground positions. What about the rest of their fleet? Asked a resistance leader from Europe. The Mori fleet relies on the command carrier for coordination, Park explained. Without it, their ships will be temporarily blinded. It was a desperate plan, but no one had better ideas. The Mori were stripping Earth of resources at an alarming rate. Intelligence suggested they planned to move on to other planets once Earth was depleted. They had to be stopped now. We attack in 3 days, Han announced. May humanity prevail. As the meeting ended, Kim approached Han privately. I've been analyzing the data from the Mori communications we've intercepted, she said quietly. And, Han prompted, they're desperate. Their homeworld is dying. That's why they're here. Resource depletion, environmental collapse. They've done to their own planet what they're now doing to ours. Han considered this information. Does that change anything for us? Kim shook her head. No, they've made it clear they see us as resources, not equals. But it explains their desperation, their willingness to risk everything on this invasion. Desperate enemies are the most dangerous, Han said. But they're not the only ones fighting for survival now. Outside the mountain base, resistance members were loading sound weapons onto trucks. Young people who had been students a year ago were now soldiers. Farmers had become fighters. Scientists had become weapon makers. The Mori had sprung their trap, but humans had refused to remain caught in it. Now that same trap would become a weapon against those who set it. In 3 days, humanity would launch its counterstrike, and the Mori would learn what humans did to those who threatened their world. The night sky was clear over what remained of Seoul. Stars shone brightly, along with the unnatural lights of Mori ships hovering in Earth's orbit. In 3 different locations around the city, resistance fighters prepared their sound weapons. General Han checked his neural interface headset one last time. The small device felt cool against his temple. Beside him, Dr. Kim adjusted her own equipment. "Are you sure you want to come on this mission?" Han asked her. "We need you here, developing more technology." Kim gave him a determined look. "No one understands the Mori systems better than I do. If something goes wrong with the interface on the command carrier, you'll need me." Han nodded. He knew better than to argue. In the years since the invasion, Kim had grown from a scientist into a warrior. They all had changed. Lieutenant Park approached, carrying a hand-drawn map of the command carrier. "Major Yoon's team is in position. They've already begun broadcasting the fake transport emergency signal." "And the global strike teams?" Han asked. "All in position. The moment the sleeper network goes down, they'll attack every Mori ground position simultaneously." Park rolled up the map. "It has to work. We won't get another chance like this." Han looked at the 20 soldiers who would join them on the mission. Each wore the neural interface. Each carried sound weapons. All had volunteered, knowing they might not return. "Remember," Han told them, "the Mori believe humans are weak. They believe their trap has beaten us. Today, we prove them wrong." A low rumble filled the air. Everyone looked up to see a large Mori transport ship descending toward their position. The fake emergency signal had worked. The Mori had sent a ship to investigate. "Sound weapons ready," Han ordered. As the transport landed, its ramp extended. 4 Mori guards emerged, scanning the area with their weapons. "Now," Han commanded. The resistance fighters activated their sound weapons. High-pitched tones filled the air. The Mori guards clutched their stone-like heads, dropping to their knees. "Move in," Han ordered. The team rushed forward, securing the stunned guards with special restraints designed for Mori physiology. Kim immediately went to the ship's control panel and connected her neural interface. "I'm in their system," she reported after a tense moment. "The ship recognizes me as a Mori commander." Park checked the ship's interior. Cargo hold is empty. They were expecting to pick up resources, not find an emergency. "Perfect," Han said. "Everyone aboard." "Kim, can you get us to the command carrier?" Kim nodded, her eyes distant as she communicated with the ship's systems through her interface. "Yes, I've already requested emergency docking clearance." They'd granted it. The team quickly boarded, securing the unconscious Mori guards in a storage compartment. Han took one last look at Earth below as the ramp closed. "Begin Phase 1, he said into his radio. Across the globe, resistance fighters activated sound weapons near sleepers. They wouldn't destroy all of them. That wasn't the plan. They just needed to create enough disruption to keep the Mori distracted. The transport ship lifted off, heading toward space. The journey to the command carrier took 30 minutes. Through the transport's windows, Han could see the massive Mori vessel growing larger. It was unlike anything humans had built, asymmetrical, with strange growths and protrusions. Less like a ship and more like a living thing. "They've cleared us for docking in Bay 12, Kim reported, still connected to the ship's systems. "They believe we're a standard transport returning with an equipment malfunction." "How long before they realize we're not Mori?" Park asked. "The docking bay is automated. We should have at least 10 minutes before any actual Mori come to check on us." The transport slid into a massive opening in the side of the command carrier. Metal clamps secured it in place. The docking bay was filled with similar transports. "Ready weapons," Han ordered. "Kim, where's the central control node?" Kim's eyes were closed as she accessed the carrier's schematics through her interface. "Level 5, Section 8. About half a mile from here. Any Mori between us And there, minimal crew in the corridors. They rely mostly on automated systems. Han turned to his team. Move out in groups of 4. Stay connected through the neural net. If anyone spots you, use the sound weapons immediately. The team exited the transport and split into groups. Han, Kim, Park, and Major Yoon formed one group, heading directly for the central control node. As they moved through the alien corridors, Han was struck by how strange everything looked. The walls seemed almost alive, pulsing with faint light. The floor was slightly soft beneath their feet. "It's biomechanical technology," Kim whispered, noticing Han's expression. The Mori blend living tissue with their machines. They encountered 2 Mori crew members. Before the aliens could react, Yoon activated her sound weapon. The Mori collapsed, clutching their heads. "The central node should be through that door," Kim said, pointing ahead. The door was large and sealed. Park examined it. "We can't break through this." Kim connected to the door's control panel with her interface. "We don't need to break it. We just need to convince it we're Mori." After a tense moment, the door slid open. Inside was a large chamber filled with pulsing, organic-looking technology. In the center stood a column of blue light, the same color as the sleepers on Earth. "That's it," Kim said with excitement. "The central control node for the entire sleeper network." As they approached, Han noticed something unexpected. Around the central column were several Mori, but they looked different from those they had encountered before. These Mori were connected to the machines by thin tubes and wires. "What are they doing?" Park asked. Kim studied them, her eyes wide. "They're not doing anything to the machines. They're part of them." She pointed to the thin, frail bodies of the connected Mori. "Look how weak they are physically. They've become completely dependent on their technology. That's why they never expected us to use their systems against them." Han realized. They can't imagine life without technological connection. Before they could reach the central column, alarms began to sound. From the corridor behind them, they heard shouts and footsteps. "They've discovered the other teams," Yoon reported, checking the neural network. "We need to hurry," Han said. "Kim, can you shut down the sleeper network from here?" Kim connected her interface to a control panel. "Yes, but it will take time to bypass their security protocols. And once I start, they'll know exactly where we are." "Do it. We'll hold them off." As Kim worked, Han, Park, and Yoon took defensive positions at the entrance. Mori forces were approaching fast. "Remember the plan," Han told them. "We just need to buy Kim enough time." The first Mori soldiers appeared at the doorway. Han and his team fired their sound weapons. The aliens fell, but more came behind them. "Almost there," Kim called. "The security protocols are complex, but I'm finding a way through." Park took a hit from a Mori weapon, clutching his shoulder in pain. Yoon pulled him back to safety. "How much longer?" Han asked, firing his weapon again. "Just a few more seconds," Kim replied. Then she smiled. "I'm in. Uploading the shutdown virus now." The blue column began to flicker. Throughout the carrier, lights dimmed. "It's working," Kim said triumphantly. "The sleeper network is collapsing." But their victory was short-lived. More Mori forces poured through the doorway. A blast struck Han in the leg, sending him to the floor. "We need to get back to the transport," Yoon shouted, helping Han to his feet. "There's no time," Han said, looking at the approaching Mori. "But I have another idea." He turned to Kim. "Can you access the carrier's navigation systems from here?" Kim nodded. "Yes, but why Wold?" Then understanding dawned on her face. "You want to crash it into their fleet. It's the only way to make sure they can't restart the network," Han said. "We came here ready to sacrifice everything." Kim looked at the navigation controls, then back at Han. "I'll need a few minutes." "You'll have them," Han promised. He turned to Yoon. "Major, get Park out of here. Take the transport and return to Earth. Tell them what happened here." Sir, I can't leave you. That's an order, Major. Earth needs to know how to fight the Mori. Yoon hesitated, then nodded. She helped Park to his feet. Come on, Lieutenant. We have our orders. As they left through a side exit, Han turned to Kim. How's it coming? Almost done, she replied, her fingers moving across the alien controls. I'm setting a collision course with their main fleet cluster. Once I activate it, we'll have about 5 minutes before impact. Han stood beside her, firing his sound weapon at any Mori who tried to enter the chamber. That should be enough time to find an escape pod. Kim gave him a sad smile. There are no escape pods, Han. The Mori don't believe in abandoning their technology. It would be like abandoning a part of themselves. Han understood then. This was truly a one-way mission. Then we make these last 5 minutes count. Kim finished her work. It's done. Course is locked in. In 5 minutes, this carrier will crash into the heart of their fleet. They stood together as the ship began to turn. Through a viewport, they could see Earth growing smaller. Do you think it worked? Kim asked. The sleeper shut down. Han nodded. I'm sure of it. Right now, all across Earth, people are rising up, taking back what's theirs. We won't see it, Kim said quietly. No, but we made it possible. Han took her hand. The Mori thought they trapped humanity. Instead, we trapped them. As the carrier accelerated toward the Mori fleet, Han and Kim watched the stars through the viewport. In the distance, they could see the small transport ship carrying Yoon and Park, heading back to Earth. They'll tell our story, Han said. How humanity turned the aliens' trap into their grave. Kim smiled. And how 2 humans helped dig it. The command carrier crashed into the Mori fleet. The explosion lit up Earth's orbit like a new sun. Far below, as sleepers worldwide went dark, humanity rose up against their would-be conquerors. The trap had been sprung, but not on the ones the Mori had intended. 3 years later, a memorial stood in Seoul where the resistance had begun. It bore a simple message. To those who turned the trap, may we never forget. And in space, where Earth's new defense fleet now patrolled, ships carried a warning to any who might think of threatening humanity again. We are the grave diggers. Tread carefully.